Alright, so today we've got the 5.2 day 3 with factoring. Basically, we're taking little pieces of what we've done in the first 2 days of this section, and we're going to present a couple new situations. So these first couple of examples is really just general factoring. So you would have seen things like these first two examples in ninth grade when you were learning about exponent rules. So really what we're doing here when you're factoring the following expression, you're basically just dividing out all common factors, right? That's what factoring is. You're simplifying it by taking out everything they have in common. Now, we could rewrite all of this completely expanded, okay? So 30 u to the sixth would be 6 u's. W squared would be 2 w's, and then y cubed would be 3 y's. Negative 18 u to the eighth, w to the ninth, we would have a negative 18 out front. There'd be 8 u's and 9 w's. Okay? And basically what we're looking at is what is everything that these two things have in common. Okay? Well, first of all, they both have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 u's in common. Okay, they have 6 u's in common, so they have u to the sixth. Okay, they have 2 w's in common, so w squared is what they also have in common for w's. And then when we look at that 30 and 18, that negative 18, okay, what are the factors that those two have in common? Well, 30, we want to find the biggest factor they have in common. 30 can be 5 times 6. Negative 18 can be negative 3 times 6. I know there's different factors of each of those, but we should be able to recognize the biggest common factor between two numbers. And in this case, that's going to be the 6. So then that would be the constant that we're pulling out front. Okay, so when you do that, we figured out that 6 u to the sixth w squared is everything that these two terms have in common. Now, just so you guys are aware, you don't have to do all of this today. You don't need to write it all out. You should be able to see, well, they have 6 u's in the first one and 8 u's in the second one. So the most u's that they can both give would be 6. They both have at least 6 u's to give. They both have at least 2 w's to give. The first one has y's, but the second one doesn't, so we can't factor out any y's. Really, the only thing that you have to check factors on is you got to do a little bit of thinking on 30 and negative 18. What's the biggest common factor that those two have? And it's going to be a 6. So when you figure out what that factor is that you're pulling out, you're basically just dividing. So I've got 30 u to the sixth w squared y cubed minus 18 u to the eighth w to the ninth. So when I'm going to factor out its greatest common factor, I'm just dividing by that 6 u to the sixth w squared. I'm just dividing both of these terms by that. Okay? So when we go ahead and we do the division, okay, 30 divided by 6, so we have 6 u to the sixth w squared out front. And then what's left over, 30 divided by 6 is going to be 5. There's 6 u's on top and 6 u's on bottom. Those cancel completely. Okay, we're canceling out when you're dividing common variables, you subtract their exponents. If there's 6 u's on top and 6 u's on the bottom, they all cancel. 2 w's on top, 2 w's on bottom, they all cancel. There's no u's or w's coming down into the factored out portion here at the bottom. And then the y's, we have y cubed on top and there are no y's on the bottom. So then all 3 y's come down after the division. Then on the right hand side, I've got negative 18 divided by 6, so we'll have minus 3. if I have 8 u's on top and 6 u's on the bottom, 8 minus 6 equals 2, so that means I have 2 u's left over after that division. And then 9 w's on top, 2 w's on bottom. 2 of them cancel out. There are 7 w's left over. This is your completely factored expression. Okay? So going through the videos today, there's probably going to be 2 videos because these examples are a little lengthy and I do want to get through all of them. So there's probably going to be 2 videos. Just go through them and pause them. If I'm talking a little quickly or if something happened that you didn't really understand as I flew through it, if I went too fast, rewind it. Watch that portion again. Pause these examples when you're working on your homework if you have a problem that's very similar. Okay, use the video options to your advantage. So the next example is the same thing. Okay, first of all, we need to be very careful when we have a u when we have a variable without an exponent on it, you've got to remember that that's an exponent of 1. Okay, so now when we talk about what is the biggest thing they all have in common, well, the 28 and the negative 24, the biggest factor that they have in common, 28 has 28 can be 1 times 28, 2 times 14, 4 times 7, and that's it. 24, negative 24, you don't have to do the negative in this portion because the negative can go with the other number. 24 has 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 6, nope, sorry, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. The biggest factor that they both have in common is going to be 4. So what you're going to factor out of 28 and negative 24 will be 4. For the u terms, the highest number of u's that both terms share is just 1. The first one is 7, but the second one only has 1, so they only have a single u in common. And then for the x's, we have 9 x's in the first one, 5 x's in the second one, so they both have 5 in common. The first one has 4 more, right? That'll come up once we factor, but they have 5 of them in common, so it would be x to the 5th. And that's it. The second one has y's, but the first one doesn't, so you can't factor them out. Okay? So then when we go ahead and actually factor out that 4u x to the 5th, you're just dividing. 4u x to the 5th, 4u x to the 5th. Again, divide one thing at a time. 28 divided by 4 is going to be 7. U to the 7th divided by a single u, okay, that's a u to the 1st. We end up with 6 u's left over. And then x to the 9th divided by x to the 5th, okay, you end up with 4 more on top. 9 minus 5 is 4. You end up with 4 more x's left over after we cancel out the 5 that they are sharing. And then on the right-hand side, negative 24 divided by 4, we'll have minus 6. A single u divided by a single u, they both cancel. X to the 5th divided by x to the 5th, those are all gone. And then y to the 3rd isn't being canceled out at all because there's no y's in that common factor, so it's just going to be negative 6y to the 3rd. And that is your complete factor and your final answer. Okay, so those first 2 problems are very much the same. The next 2, or I should say the next one, has a little bit of yesterday in it. All right. So one thing you want to notice, if you don't notice this, it's fine, but it will make things a little bit easier for you. If you notice, all 3 of these terms right now have something in common. It doesn't happen very often, but they all have something in common. I can factor a 3 out of all of these. They all have 3 as a common factor. So what I will end up with, factoring a 3 out, I will have v squared. That's going to cancel to 11v. And then this is going to cancel 30. 9 divided by 3 is 30. So what that's going to do for you, if you guys remember from yesterday, factoring out trinomials with a 1 in front of that first term is a lot easier than factoring out expressions with something other than a 1 in front of that first term. So when you end up at this point, we've already factored out a 3. That's going to be part of our final answer. That's going to just stay put, okay? So you don't want to lose that. And then the inside, this trinomial that's left over, is just like yesterday. We're going to be using that AC method. I have a 1 and a 30. So my AC is 30, and I need to find two factors that will multiply to 30 and add to 11. So 5 times 6, and when I add them, that gives me 11. And then if you remember from yesterday, these are the two numbers that make up those binomials then. So then I've got v plus 5 and v plus 6. Remember, don't lose the 3. That 3 is still up front as a part of your final answer when you fully factor it. And that would be your final answer. Okay? If you didn't factor that 3 out first, if you didn't make that first step of factoring the 3 out, you would end up with v plus 6 and 3v plus 15 as your two binomials. And then you would have to notice, hey, I'm not fully factored because that one binomial still has common factors in it. So then that v plus 6, and I would factor a 3 out of both of these to make it v plus 5, and that 3 would come out front over here, and I would end up with the same thing. Okay, so you notice there that even if you don't do that first step of dividing out the 3 right away, you still can end up with the final answer. It's just going to make life a lot easier on you to have it done that way. Then the last 3, we're taking advantage of some shortcuts. Okay, so if you remember, first of all, we have common terms, common factors in this first expression. Okay, 75y and negative 12y cubed can both be divided by 3y. So when I factor a 3y out of here, 75 divided by 3 is 25, and the y's cancel. So I've got 25, and then 12 divided by 3 is going to be 4. Don't forget that minus sign. And y cubed divided by a y, that'll change to y squared with one of them being canceled. I end up with minus 4y squared. Hopefully what we're noticing at that point is that this piece is a difference of squares, okay? And we have shortcuts for stuff like that, okay? Use the shortcuts. You remember yesterday we looked at this 2 ways. First of all, you could say that I have 25 plus 0y minus 4y squared, and I could do the AC method where I end up with negative 100, and then I need 2 factors of negative 100 that will add to 0. It'd be 10 and negative 10, because you add them together, you get 0. Okay, this is one way you can do it. I know I'm going quick, but it's the same AC method, and you would end up with 10 plus y. I should write that the other way here. Y plus 10, y minus 10, and remember I factored that 3y out to begin with, okay? But we've got a shortcut, okay? We want to make sure, I would not go about it this way, because I actually think I end up giving you guys something there that would have been incorrect. And that's just more proof that you don't want to go the AC method if you don't have to. And when you have a difference of squares, we want to go that way. Your difference of squares, a squared minus b squared, will give you a plus b times a minus b. And the a and the b are the square roots of those two pieces, right? So the square root of 25 is 5. So I end up with 5 for my a. Square root of 4y squared is 2y. So I end up with 5 plus 2y, 5 minus 2y, And don't lose your 3y that was out front.